In my studio, a vast amount of kit is older than me. The studio tripod, back yonder, this is older than me. This light here, which is what's in there? A 1200 watt broncolor pulsar head, this is about as old as me. And this budget broncolor Primo pack is also older than me. And the reason I wanted to show you those very old items is not because I'm getting old, but because they still work and I still use them professionally and commercially. And in this video, I want to talk about the difference between premium kit and budget kit and which one's right for you. Now, I recently got sent some kit from a budget brand. I'm not going to tell you who they are at this stage. We're going to do some more work on that in the future. And I fired one of their flashes several hundred times in order to sort of get a bit of an idea as to how accurate they were. Because as a professional photographer, we often shoot in a series or we shoot for a composite. Now, if we've got 10 frames and we tell the flash to fire at 500 watts, we need that flash to fire at 500 watts. If we say the white balance needs to be this, it kind of needs to be that. We don't have the room to fix each frame in, but I mean, we could do, but it is a nightmare. What you're going to see now is every single frame of that fired up past you. And you'll notice very quickly that it is absolutely impossible to turn these into any sort of meaningful composite should we've needed to. Now, the flash duration in there was very consistent. We chose something pretty tricky, really. We're trying to fire a flash at a very short flash duration just to see how it would compare to, say, a Scoro pack, which is what we'd rent in for the jobs. I don't actually use these really old things for big commercial jobs. They're just my day-to-day looking around, or clients with low budgets get them. But if we're doing a real big thing, we'll use the £14,000 packs and the £3,000 heads. And they just fire, and every single frame is identical. I can't pop them up on here because it's all commercial work for clients, but take my word for it, there is no variation in them. Now, this is a major, major thing for my type of work. If I turned around to a client and went, here's your composite or here's your stop motion, but all the frames are different, moggy hair, they're not going to be very impressed. So, one of the main reasons that I buy this particularly expensive kit, like it's there, isn't it? I can never do this screen thing. This thing here is because they are consistent. And the white balance that comes out of them is consistent, the power that comes out of them is consistent, and the flash duration is consistent. It's not enough just for the flash to fire in what I do. It also needs to have that continuity. Now, that's not important for everybody. If I was a wedding photographer, probably wouldn't care about that. If I was an event photographer, definitely wouldn't care about that, because all the frames are going to be slightly different anyway. If I was working in a product photography studio doing pack shots, the white cutouts, it would be very important. You can't have the shot at 3 different angles at 3 different white balances, especially when you've got 3 lights firing and each one chooses a slightly different white balance. That's when you start to get issues. Now, obviously, if you're shooting for a local restaurant, whatever it may be, you probably don't need it either. So, yes, there is a gold standard here, which is the sort of Scoro packs and the new heads they've produced, or whatever Pro Photos, the Pro Photo 11 packs. They are like £15,000, ludicrously expensive. And I think Elinchrom have a digital pack as well, which is also rather expensive. Not quite as expensive as those two, but enough to make you wince a little bit and probably want to rent it rather than buy it. Now, although these people do offer these kits that offer perfect white balance and everything else, you're probably thinking, yeah, but who cares? I'm going to go and shoot 10 shots in my local restaurant. And you're completely right. You don't need that kit, and there's no need for you to buy that kit. And for a lot of the shots I do, I don't need that kit, which is why I rent it. But this is a key difference that you need to look at when thinking, well, why would you pay so much for this kit when you could just get it from China? Now, alongside that, we have reliability. The kit I showed you at the start still works today. Yes, I've got to the point where I don't trust it because I also don't trust my back to work in the mornings, and it's the same age as me. Maybe it's been looked after a bit better, though. But it works. And the fact that this works this much further down the road tells me that the brand new stuff is never going to let me down. I bought a load of, I think it's pronounced Yongnuo lights, 6 of them. One of them didn't work straight out the packet. One of them broke a week later. I would never dare use the other ones on a job because chances are one of them will break. The quality control just isn't there. And that's why they're cheaper. Now, you might be thinking, well, I can buy 20 lights for the same price as, actually, you could buy more than that. I could buy 100 lights for the same price as one broncolor pack. And yes, you could. But do you have the time to consistently change them in and out? And also, those broken ones are going in the bin. And there's quite a lot around there. And I guess £15,000 is obscene money for a light. But if you're charging £50,000 a day, it starts to make a little bit more sense. And then when you tie that into, the functionality and breaking of them to the actual consistency of the output, you start to go, well, actually, that's why you pay this much money. However, if you're only charging $1,000 a day, probably want to stick to the Yong, Newer or Godox brands. Now, something which a lot of people don't talk about, and this is the sort of inventions and the sort of pushing the envelope further and further forward. Like Broncolor recently bought out a 3D sort of light dome thing, which you can do these great reproductions with. That costs a lot of money in R&D. And that's just a simple fact of the matter. Now, I know that a certain big Chinese brand recently copied the Broncolor triggers, and they didn't have to pay for that R&D because they just got a Broncolor one, took it apart and built it again. And that's great that you can buy that cheap one. It won't have the same reliability, the same quality control. It doesn't have the cool green sticker on it, which, let's be honest, is important. But if these bigger brands disappear, all of a sudden, all of that R&D is going to disappear, and we'll be stuck with the sort of more bizarre things like the lights that have a lightning storm option on them. Now, as well as the lights themselves, there's also the modifiers to talk about. And maybe more important than the lights, if you're sitting there going, yes, well, I don't need consistent light output. I don't need consistent flash duration. I don't need consistent white balance. That's fine. Not every shot requires those things. But what you do need is a good modifier, and cheap modifiers look cheap. I have had so many cheap modifiers sent to the studio that I don't bother reviewing. I email them back and go, I'm really sorry, I have nothing good to say about this. If you compare it to a Broncolor or an Elinchrom make particularly beautiful modifiers. I'm not so familiar with the Pro Photo ones, but I know a lot of people use Pro Photo lights and Elinchrom modifiers. That's probably for a reason. Contrary to popular internet belief, we don't all get paid to use the kit we use, we buy it. But it's also things like the big hard box I've got behind me, the Hazy. Godox aren't going to knock one of those out anytime soon, and that is a particular look. The soft lighters I bought from years ago, that's a real difference. Let me just show you what the biggest difference is that you'll ever see in a modifier. This is a well-known Chinese brand's reflector, and it's pretty much the only one they do. They're cheap, which is good. They cost like £7, which is very good. On the other end of the scale, this is a £200 Broncolor reflector. And it is old, but it obviously still works because it's metal. Now, the light you get from this, you cannot fake. You cannot create in post. You cannot do anything with the cheaper brand options to mimic this. This here has a specific look. So even if you can't justify the expensive lights, you might want to think about the expensive modifiers, because this is where your images really shine. I'm doing a video at the moment on the 5DSR camera system, but this is more important than that. This will have a bigger impact on your image quality than buying a better camera. I'd rather have this and a Canon than this and a Phase 1, given the choice. Obviously, Phase 1, if you're listening, I'd like to have a Phase 1 to go with this as well. But I can't afford one at the moment. Now, I hope that's been of some use to you, and it's not saying that cheap lights are rubbish. They're not. It is amazing what you can get. I was recently sent a very small battery-powered 300-watt light, which, honestly, I couldn't believe how good it was. It will never compete with a Broncolor Mobile, but then the price difference is so much that for the price of one of those reflectors I just showed you, the big ones, you could buy that entire light. So it really is a horses for courses, but I think just going, well, cheap lights are better, the spec sheet says it's the same, is a very misinformed way to look at things. The spec sheet itself says very little about the quality of light. The numbers it says it can produce, that there's a plus or minus that they're hiding in there somewhere. The T-score that they're reporting on, is it T1 or T5? Because they're two very different things. So looking at those things, I think it's easier to make a more informed decision, and hopefully this has helped you. If it has, let me know. If there's something you feel that I've completely missed, also let me know, because it'd be good to add that to a future video. I hope you're enjoying these videos. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.